huge, monstrous, and highly destructive. I already made a video like this, but Runeterra has a lot of monsters, so let's talk about a few others. And no, you don't have to watch the first one to understand this. There's no order at all. Baron Nashor. The most classic monster in League. And in most cases, it basically decides the end of a match because of the buff it gives to the team that kills it, making it the most desired objective in the jungle. If you didn't know, Baron is a creature from the void, and it has an appearance similar to a giant mutated worm. And man, Baron is super famous. It's gone through several reworks already. In this post by Shuggy from Demacia on Twitter, he shows the evolution of Baron from its first design, which lasted from 2009 to 2014, and that version really made it look like a radioactive earthworm. And you can even see that even though it's a worm, it had a skeleton, and its blood had this glowing green tone to show how corrosive or toxic it could be. And in game, we also had this greenish effect like a toxic vapor surrounding Baron. And on top of that, in its ranged attack, it would spit this corrosive substance that would even spread across the ground. All of that, both its appearance and abilities, makes it seem like this first version of Baron was inspired by a cryptid known as the Mongolian deathworm, especially when you look at all that corrosive, acidic aspect and everything. In 2015, Baron got its first rework. It's worth mentioning that this new appearance was first shown in the cinematic A Twist of Fate, where we see Baron attacking Tibbers with its 3 heads and devouring it, then getting ready to attack the champions who were gathered there. What's interesting is that the first visual rework can, in a way, be an allusion to the Lernaean Hydra from Greek mythology. Actually, it really does, since in one of its final concept sketches, you can see the right side of Baron having multiple heads. And if you zoom in, you can clearly read the note left by the artist saying that Baron would grow 4 Hydra heads during the fight when it was already low on health. What's cool is that this sketch also lets us see, in the drawing on the left, Baron's full length. Basically, the part that stays inside the void rift where it emerges from its lair in the river. And the one below, also on the right side, shows that they considered giving it a tongue full of spiky teeth that would shoot out of Baron's mouth, dealing massive amounts of damage. And before this look was chosen, there were actually 6 more concept versions of Baron, each one more disgusting than the last. But when the 2024 season came around, Baron got reworked again. That was the season where we got the addition of the Void Grubs, along with other jungle monsters that ended up being corrupted by the void. And here's something I'm pretty sure almost no one knows. This new Baron actually has 3 forms, which are hunting, territorial, and all-seeing. In terms of appearance, only a small detail changes in each form, like you can see in the images. But when it comes to gameplay, the territorial and all-seeing forms permanently change the terrain around the Baron pits. The first one adds a small wall in front of the pit, while the second creates a long side tunnel. Each form also has a special ability that gets activated after 6 attacks following the use of its ability, Acid Pool. The territorial one is the one that pulls forward, an attack that barely does any damage. The all-seeing one opens a straight void rift that deals damage over time. And the hunting one creates a targeted beam on each nearby champion, dealing 20% of their max health. Yeah, it's by far the most broken one compared to the others. And here we have a piece of final concept art for this new Baron, showing more of the shape of its head. There's also this really sick gif showing the creation of the effect where we see Baron's shadow swimming through the river toward its lair. And honestly, its movement really does look like a worm. This new look was made by the Rioter art director Jim Lonewinji Lim, who I've actually mentioned in the other videos here on the channel. In this case, Lim believed Baron could be a true representation of the void and a genuine terror from the abyss. The goal was to unsettle the players, making them fear what might come next, while also making Baron feel incredible again, since back then its first version was also seen that way. Plus, since its first major update, it hadn't really changed after that, so they felt like it was finally time for a new visual and gameplay update. Now, this look leans way more into that Lovecraftian horror vibe. During the concept phase, that was even more obvious. Just look at Model B. Baron's whole aesthetic was basically straight up Cthulhu, Clayton, whatever you want to call it. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's kind of an ancient cosmic entity from the works of H.P. Lovecraft. and definitely the most famous one. But there's no way not to talk about that concept A either, because that one was straight up disturbing. From what it seems, Baron would actually start as a cluster of fish eggs, which would hatch and crawl around, merging like a swarm until they eventually formed a gigantic creature. Now, I'm gonna try to rank the power and size of the Baron versions that have appeared so far. In 5th place, we have the original version of Baron, which is definitely the smallest. And I say that because we don't really know its full length underground, and the visible part outside already shows it being smaller than its 2015 rework. In 4th place, we have the reworked Baron that appears in the cinematic A Twist of Fate, but it also shares the spot with its counterpart from the Star Guardian universe, which also proved to be extremely durable, taking 4 hits and not even getting scratched. In 3rd place, I'd put the new Baron we currently have in game. It's stronger and bigger than the other Barons. I've even seen it as some kind of new mutation or evolution of the Void that the 4th place version eventually went through. Plus, it's the Baron that causes other creatures to become corrupted by the Void when it emerges. In 2nd place, we also have a tie. Here we've got the versions from Legends of Runeterra. Both of them reference Baron's second appearance, and they share the same name and short description that says, his barony is rather small, just large enough to accommodate only him, really. This card on the left is exclusive to the Path of the Champions, and what's interesting is that this Baron has different color palettes, moving away from the purple and going more towards blue, cyan, and black. The card on the right only appeared in the Welcome to the Jungle Lab, and it has colors that are more faithful to the second Baron. The sad part is that you can tell the artwork was still being finalized, but never was, and probably never will be. Now, something that you can associate with these versions of Baron is that basically alludes to another creature from Greek mythology, a worm-like sea monster called Scolopendra, known for being one of the largest, if not the largest, of all sea beasts. And what's cool and kind of disgusting too, is that if you search the name on Google Images, what shows up are centipedes, since that's basically the Latin term for centipedes. Now, in absolute first place, we have the Scourge, a card from Legends of Runeterra whose description says the following. Legends speak of a scourge that lurks at the furthest reaches of the celestial realm. Here, it awaits the time at the end of time, when it will wield the power of the stars to shatter the foundations of the world. And just for context, Scourge can mean great calamity, catastrophe, disaster, plague, you name it. This card was internally called Hydra Constellation. Now, its real origin is a bit confusing, since there are 3 interpretations. The first one is that Scourge is one of the constellation creations, a cosmic being created by Aurelian Sol himself.
Oh, I am good, aren't I? A familiar face for you Runeterrans.
So Aurelian Sol would have basically used Baron Nashor's appearance for the creation of his, which is kind of weird to imagine, since Aurelian Sol despises the Void and its spawn, which he considers nothing more than beasts of infinite hunger. But who knows what goes on in the mind of a space dragon with more arrogance and ego than the universe itself. The second interpretation is the most interesting and insane one. It starts because one of the voice lines from another Legends of Runeterra character called Mountain Scryer. Check this out.
The scourge destroys all. Many heads strike. He descended through sheer force of will.
This third line basically suggests that Baron Nashor, a being from the Void, transcended its form, ascending to a celestial level purely through its own willpower. I already mentioned in the Kaisa Suit Anatomy video that the evolutionary potential of the Void is something completely insane, and it should never under any circumstances be underestimated. So not only is it possible, but it's also kind of wild to imagine Baron having consumed and absorbed the magic from Mount Targon, which is basically a living mountain filled with celestial magic. Or who knows, maybe Baron even consumed Soraka, and that triggered a mutation in response to assimilation of a divine being, even if Soraka was in her physical form. But based on the voice line from Mount Scryer, I think maybe Baron could have faced some kind of opponent from the celestial plane, maybe even an aspect, and that triggered in its nature the will to surpass its enemy at any cost, which eventually led to its transformation. And it's worth remembering that celestial magic is one of the few things, if not the main thing, that can actually harm a creature nature of the void, even completely obliterating it. So Baron would have overcome that weakness, forcing its physical form to evolve non-stop until it matched or even surpassed beings that are the natural opposite of the void. The power level of the Scourge would be way higher than even Bel'Veth, who is currently the most modern and evolved void entity we have, basically an evolutionary manifestation of the void after so much contact with reality. And on top of that, the Scourge's size must be absolutely astronomical. You can even see in its card splash art that it looks like it's emerging from the clouds. So if the Scourge really is Baron Nashor ascended into a celestial form, then it takes the crown as the king of monsters. And well, the last interpretation of the Scourge is that it's just a constellation meant to represent the void and the inevitable end of Runeterra, and that matches the card's description, which says it waits at the edges of the celestial plane, preparing to use the power of the stars to destroy the foundation of the world. The void exists beyond the realm of creation, which is basically the union of three existing realms: the celestial, physical, and spiritual. As for this part about using the power of the stars, I'm not entirely sure. Could the void be searching for the world runes? Who knows? But either way, the point is, Baron is insanely cool, no matter which version. Before we keep going, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and consider becoming a member. You'll get access to some really cool perks like picking video topics or getting early access to videos. Balestriders, Wanderers. The Balestriders, also known as the Wanderers, are a legend from Freljord, a dark omen. It's said that these gigantic beasts roam the Arctic regions of North Freljord. And for those of you who don't know, there actually is an Arctic zone in Runeterra. You can see it more clearly in this image. It's probably a place where the cold is even more extreme compared to the other territories of the Avarosans, the Winter's Claws, and the Pelagius. The only tribe that lives close to the Arctic zone is the land of the Ursine. But getting back to the point, the Wanderers have bodies similar to giraffes, and their most striking feature are their massive horns, similar to true ice, and their cyclopean eyes glowing with a bright blue color, along with humanoid arm-like protrusions spread across their bodies like fur. Representations of these creatures can be seen across the many bridges of the Howling Abyss, which is the ARAM map. It's also said that the Wanderers were once magnificent and terrifying beings before being twisted far beyond their original form, eventually becoming bound under their commands of the Three Sisters through a pact with the Watchers. And you can even find that in a passage from the short story The Legend of the Frozen Watchers, where Lysandra begins talking to her sisters about everything they achieved through their pact with the Watchers. And at a certain point, she mentions the magnificent and terrible Wanderers, now far removed from their original forms, moving under the command of the Three Sisters. There are also voice lines from Lysandra herself interacting with the Wanderers in Legends of Runeterra.
You walk the lands once more. You will obey me.
And in this case, Lysandra talks about them having broken free since they were previously imprisoned, just like the Watchers themselves. But the one who imprisoned them was actually Anivia, as stated in a passage from a certain legend. Anivia knew she could not slay these colossal creatures, and so she plunged them into the ice beneath their feet, shattering her own body in order to entomb them. Basically, Anivia sacrificed herself to freeze that march of Wanderers, which was basically like the rumbling from the colossal titans in Attack on Titan. And keep in mind that Anivia herself, who is a divine spirit that existed since the formation of Runeterra, was the being responsible for creating true ice, and is actually afraid of the Wanderers.
As I feared, they've returned. I have felt this corruption before. You know of eternity. Strange enemies have returned. The Ancient Ones walk these lands once more. Where she walks, death follows.
I just find it interesting that in one of Anivia's voice lines, she refers to one of the Wanderers as female. I don't know if the species has male and females, or if they even have a defined sex at all, but I think they might, since there's another hint pointing to that. Either way, if the Wanderers are ancient beings that have lost their original forms long ago, it makes me wonder if, before the corruption, they were some kind of spiritual or cosmic entity that existed in Freljord, but that's never really explained, which just makes the Wanderers even more mysterious. As for the magic that corrupted them, it's already been made clear it was the work of the Watchers. In fact, Riot used an old concept of the Ice Watchers, which was originally meant to be used in some past story or event in Freljord, as the basis for creating the Wanderers concept. And in Legends of Runeterra, we have 3 cards that show some of the Wanderers, which are They Who Endure, She Who Wanders, and It That Stares. The Wanderers have a special attack where they unleash some kind of piercing gaze. You can see it in that last card I mentioned, and even more clearly in the skill card, Balesight. And it even has a first-hand description given by an old man named Björn, the Wanderer, where he says, "Unearthly light flooded the valley as a piercing wail rattled the rocks from the cliffs. My sinews from their bones, the very thoughts from my mind. Then silence." About that beam attack, which would definitely freeze and obliterate anything it hits, you could say it's a clear reference to the heart ray used by the tripods in the War of the Worlds, which instantly vaporized people on contact and left only their clothes behind. The second thing is that this blast was witnessed by Björn, has made clear the encounter with that creature and what it did completely drove him insane, turning him from Björn the Wanderer into babbling Björg. He even tries to convince people in a tavern in Freljord to believe what he saw, telling these stories. But obviously, as you can tell from the bartender's expression, no one cares at all. So yeah, this guy basically became a classic town lunatic that keeps saying the world is ending, or that we need to wear tinfoil hats to protect our thoughts from a government controlled by aliens. Man, honestly, I wish that in future Freljord season, if we didn't get a Watcher as a map monster, it could easily be a Wanderer instead. I can totally imagine it walking along the river in a slow march, locking onto the nearest champions, attacking them, then firing a piercing beam which could freeze the river water, trapping champions, or applying some kind of movement debuff. That would be insane. And if you like the Wanderers, there's even a chippy version of one of them in Legends of Runeterra, if I'm not mistaken. At least based on the file info and the image. It seems to be from there. Elder Dragon. This one here is another really famous one, having the only takedown effect that rivals and is often even more desired than Barons. The Elder Dragon couldn't be left out. In its card description in Legends of Runeterra, we get a line from a character named Volix, a Demacian who rides a dragon called Alatus, and the detail here is that this rider dreams of one day taming the Elder Dragon. But according to the card's description, Volix says that legend tells of the Elder Dragon being the oldest of them all, holding the crown as the king of all winged beasts. And honestly, we don't know much about the Elder Dragon, whether it comes from a specific ancient dragon species, if other elemental dragons can become the Elder Dragon over time, or by defeating the previous one, or anything like that. But so far, it seems to be the only known specimen of its kind. And man, the Elder Dragon is huge. Look at the siege Volix set up against it. Notice the size difference between Alatus and the Elder Dragon, and even the silver wings. And in the other Elder Dragon card, we can see it unleashing that blue breath attack. Dude, that thing would definitely melt fortress structures and burn other dragons with ease. Even though we don't have the outcome of that fight in any other card, I'm 100% betting on the Elder Dragon. Now, I can't really say which version of the Elder Dragon is the strongest, because believe it or not, it actually has 2 skins, and both are insanely cool. The first one is Old God Elder Dragon, from the Coven universe, and of course it also has lore. It says the following: by order of a power older than death itself, a skeletal form rises from the foul waters of the swamp. Once, this creature was a revered god. By the will of the Horned King, it will soon be restored to its former glory. And at level 2 of the card, we have another splash art, and the description for this card is provided by Mordekaiser himself, the ancient god, who says, "Death will not stop you, old friend. We have much to accomplish together." Absolutely insane. Now, its other skin is the Heaven Scale universe, and its story goes like this. The Crimson Elder remembers a time before human subjects existed among dragons. While the younger generations of the Dragon Court take interest in human celebrations deep beneath the earth, he has no interest in the trivial matters of the mortals, and will never be convinced to take on a human form. And just like Old God, this skin also has a level 2. The description of the card states that as the keeper of the court's culture and tradition, the Crimson Elder watched Lee Sin's journey with skepticism. At first, he intended to reprimand the prince for breaking decorum, but he discovered that mortals had a tradition he might actually embrace: fireworks. And what's cool is that they actually added the effects of the dragon boons with a firework effect as well. And even the spell card Primordial Roar was also redesigned for the skin. But yeah, that's basically it. I'll see you guys in the next video.